Okay, so we're going to be on page Lamed Daled in the Rashash.
Dalit?
And we're going to read the top part. This will fill in a little bit more of what we saw in the Rashash.
We're going back. We actually, I had us on one of the tests, Mem That's where.
Lamed Tes,
Uh-huh.
Mem Vav. Mem Vav. Yeah, maybe Mem Vav. I don't have a mark on Mem Vav. Let me just read this on Lamed Daled. I'll read across the just the topic.
On the Dalit?
Yeah, it says Yisboyer. Yeah, because sometimes I don't mark these well.
Okay.
So he says Yisboyer Makom Hamshachas Tipa. So let's explain the place that the tipa is going to. Bir Tevis Vayaavor, and he explains the word Yavor. So let's just read across the top and get the flow going. And I do have a mark there that this is where we're supposed to begin on 613, because I think that what we did was we did the top and we didn't do the bottom. In other words, we read across because it's interesting Inyan, but we didn't read the tiv. So that's where we're at right now, really.
Actually, we stopped at the previous lesson, but I have us, on the base.
Okay. Okay, I have a date here. I have a mark here, so that's the reason why I put my mark where I want to start the next time. Okay. So and it may be and it actually is number Lamed Bet. My mistake. Lamed Bet, not Lamed Aleph. It's okay. We're at the top of the column on page Lamed Hey. It says Ke'ez Chozer U'Mavayir Masha Gavar Bir Le'el. Now we're going to go back and we're going to explain again. What are the portions that the tipa is, that we're talking about, this precious tipa, which is coming from Roma Ma'alos, which he defined yesterday as the chesadim. It comes from the chesed of das of Atik, which is just, it's like this. You have a blank screen, and then this appears. You don't know where it came from. But there it is. This power of this chesed is really this power of this tipa, which is produced, which he said before, in the chokhmah of the I keep blanking of the tzelem, probably the mem of the tzelem, a glowing light, which is not. He explained that yesterday, which does not diminish. He uses the word does not thicken, and it becomes more physical. It's a pure light. So we can only imagine what this could be, because even though I try to use the metaphor that it's like appearing, out of nowhere, huh? Say that again?
We're saying. Pure light, the thin pure light.
Well, that Avir Dakia really refers to a specific place in the Gugolta of Eric Anpin, of the skull of Eric Anpin. We're before that level. Way panimi to this.
Okay.
So all of it, what we're getting at here is that everything is coming out of nowhere. And so we have no references for it. You know how it is that we know that the world is moving at a pace of 1,000 miles an hour? It's because in relative to other things. It's really the whole world is a fantasy in a certain way because it's all relative. So if it depends, that's Einstein's theory of relativity. Everything depends on something else. If you could get closer to the source of where things start, well, here's what we're talking about. So how does this come about? Anyway, I got carried away in my thinking. Let's go. And where did these portions go? So he said, Chelik Echad, whom Masha Kasev Rav La'el. So one portion is what the Rav talked about up above. V'asheni hu lahamshicha b'chesed dezer anpen. And the second one is to bring it into the chesed dezer anpen. V'chelik zen na'asim m'shem havaya shal av deyudin. So this is the first havaya that we saw in the depiction in the Rashash. If you want, we can look at the Rashash again. He's explaining. Sheyesh bo dalid. The dalid. This letter dalid, I think, is a misprint. So the sheyesh bo dalid yudin. Shuhu b'gematria av, and then he shows it. Yud vav dalid ke yud vav ke yud, and there's 4 yuds in there. But he doesn't develop that idea. Because so maybe I'm wrong. Is that those yuds actually represent chokhmah, and chokhmah is intimately involved in yichud. So without it, there is none. Chibuk yoser ma'ulam in the rishun. So it brings in maybe the concept of these yudin. Shuhu chibuk avur hazivugim shiya'asa ke'es, because what we're doing here with this first portion is we're sending, I'm just saying this name, which has 4 yuds in it, in some way to facilitate the yichud ke'es of the zun, which is 2 opposites, male and female, which are Yisrael and Leah, and also which take place in Vayaavor, and Yaakov and Rachel that takes place in Nefilat Apayim. Okay, let me read this again for myself. Going to the phrase Shuhu. Shuhu chibuk, so this first portion is going to go for the chibuk, avur hazivugim sheya'asa ke'es, the zivugim we're going to make now. What are the zivugim? One is zun. Again, this phrase zun refers to more than, it refers to opposites. The ultimate opposites is what we call male and female, are giver and receiver. Something like that. So anyway, in other words, if you're going to give something, you have to have a receptacle. If you don't have the receptacle first, what are you bothering with? So it's a kind of a bit like that. So he says, Shehem zun Yisrael v'Leah b'Vayaavor. So you see him over there in Yavor. And then that, in that word, in other words, that yichud, which I don't have a definition for really to understand what it accomplishes, and hopefully we're searching for this. That answer, I am. So he said, and that's one yichud. So that's Yisrael and Leah. And usually they say above the chaz. And then Yaakov and Rachel ben Nefilat Apayim. And then that's going to be, we haven't got to Nefilat Apayim yet. So that's where the yichud is going to take place of Yaakov and Rachel. But Nimshach, so then we go on, V'cholech, Chelek zeh shal tipa b'kav yomim, shuhu chesed izah. So where are we taking this tipa? We're moving it over to the right side, which is going to be the chesed izah's right arm, shuhu hazroach yamonis shal zah, his right arm. And now we get this picture right now, so we're concentrating on this one havaya, is the havaya with 4 yudin in it, and it's going over to the right arm. So everything that's to be done like now. Hukadei la'asos ke'es is make now. He keeps using this word ke'es. But, okay, instead of other words for now, there's other words. Hukadei la'asos ke'es chibuk yoser ma'ula, to be able to make a chibuk that's on a much higher level. Remember we talked about this yesterday. In the three brachos, I think he may spell it out. So the three avs, he says, take place over there in the Birchei Avos, and the next one was, well, I don't know, one was Ata Gibor. You can say it maybe. So why is this yichud, the one that we're doing now in Vayaavor, is a higher level yichud, he said, than the one that you do in the beginning of the Shemona Esrei? Kamosha Kasa the El Tipa Zu Hanimsheches, because this tipa, which is going downwards, he tipa ma'ula beyoser, it says a tremendously high quality. That's the reason why this is more ma'ula, because you have this pure light coming all the way from the chesed of the chesed of the das of we'll just call the chesed of das all the way of Atik, all the way down here. Kevin shenimshechad b'makom gavoa, it's coming from such a high place. Ki nimshechad ma'or hamakiv shalachach b'dazah. So he says, I said what he said earlier, that it came from the chasadim of das. But here he actually pointed it out that what does it look like to us? It's coming all the way through Ima, and it's coming out, popping out as a moach, and the moach is the moach of the chochma that's going into Zera Anpin. Ki nimshach ma'or hamakif. This is, remember, there's 2 different types of oros. This is the light which is tremendously high. Shal Chachma Dezer Anpin. Hanimsa al Rosha, which is originally on top of his head. V'shorshem mechosad dedas da'atik. Oh, this is where it comes from. So maybe I read this once before, so we're reading it again. Gemoshe Kasav Rav La'el, like the Rav says up above. Shetibas achazra he mu'ula ma'od. The tipa of the zra is tremendously high quality. V'atam kavar kasavnu la'el. We read this up above. Kevin she'enim is ava klal b'ridas. Well, we said this before too. So that's a great thing about the tiv. He keeps repeating these hard ideas. It's terrific. So he says, "Kevin she'enim is ava klal b'ridas." So he doesn't thicken at all as he's going down. Because normally that's what happens with shefa. That's the whole idea, is to deliver it into a physical world. So everything else gets more thick. So they have the same light up above and down below. It's the same light, powerful light. So, and its purpose, just to shine. Its light is tremendously high. Besod or shel Maaseh Bereshis. It's the same light as the Maaseh Bereshis. So he's then telling you something about Bereshis, the idea of Bereshis, so we could trace it all the way back to the Chasad B'das of Atik. That is a very limited amount of understanding, only understanding the words that the Rav tells us. That's it. Hameir and B'techilas ha'olam v'ad sofa, they could shine all the way over through one end of the world to the next. V'chibuk zeh hu avor hazivugim she'ya'asa ke'es. And the whole reason for bringing this down, and this he's telling us, is a very powerful, powerful light that's taking place in Tachnun. Is that light is coming to promote a yichud, the yichud of zun. So here's the definition of zun. Yisrael v'leya b'yavavor. So zun is more than one thing. It's two things, at least. V'Yaakov Vayaavor Nefilat Apayim. So we have to go through that. So this is the whole purpose. So he says something in the Shefa. Let's go on. Lamed Hey. Aval Gimel Ava Rishonim Shepirtam Harav La'el. So originally, we said that there were three avs that the Rav talked about them. Sha'al Yadam Na'asa B'chibuk HaKoidim, because through them you're making here the first chibuk b'hamida b'gimel makomo. So that's the first. What he said. He says that's the first time that you used the concept of the three avs. That's the first time. So what that took place in the brachos at the beginning of the Shemona Esrei. B'gimel makomos. Hachibuk harishon b'tzad yomim. So the first is chibuk takes place on the right hand. B'chesed dezah hana'asa b'berchos avos, which is done in berchos avos. V'chibuk hasheni, the second one, hu hachibuk b'tzad small, is a chibuk that takes place in the left. B'gevur dezah hana'asa ba'ata gibor. So he's like explaining out where that's the first one takes up in the avos, and then the second one. Now we're talking about the lower level of chibuk, right? Because what we're talking about here is a much higher level. So that's because of the nature of the light. He said, "Ba'ata gibor v'hachibuk hashlishi shel av hu hachibuk b'kavim soy." And this is something we have to learn later. Shehu b'teferes dezah, that takes place in the middle line, is the teferes dezah hana'asa ba'ata kadosh. Okay, so that was just explaining out what we have here is what happened in the first time we had a chibuk. Shlosha kibukim elu shehoya nifradim. So these kibukim are all separate. B'chibuk hakodah b'tefilas amida, and this is the chibuk that takes place like at the beginning of a tefillah. B'tefilas amida, he said, hakodim, it comes first in the amida. V'hoya b'chagat, where would it be located in Zer Anpin, this chibuk? It takes place in the center section of Zer Anpin, which is his chagat. So he says, Ovrim amiskabsim ke'es. So they pass through there, they gather now. Kulam el hasmol dezah. Now they all move over to the left line of Zah. B'sham his chavroh v'kol shlosha chiburim elu. So now all of these 372s come together. Shehem av asher sekunim akolel Yotze Rayo. So it comes out to be, again, this concept of Rayo, which we said before, is the sweetened din, because Rayo is the gematria of Gevura, but it's made out of Chasadim. So we see how this goes. Shezechu begematria Gevura. So that would be that's the ideal. That's really an ideal. So now he says, Choizer umaskem mashin is boyalei. Let me go back, he says, and let me repeat once again what we explained. The ha'av shem bebechinas hachesed shuhu avar chibuk chadash mu'ula yoser. So this av, this first split, we're splitting up the avs, is for the purpose of this really high level chibuk. Shuhu chibuk avar chazivugim. It's a chibuk that's leading, I guess, for the sake of an actually making a yichud. Zun, that's now which once again he says which are Zun, Yisrael v'Leah, Vayaavor, and Yaakov Arachel Nefilat Apayim, who nimshak levado bezroa yamin. It extends down by itself onto the right line. This is this Av of 72, which is a milui of Yudin, min a tipa shenischalko. That comes from this tipa that was divided up. So he says, Ke'es, Maskem as a Gavana Sheyesh Kan Av V'Rayo. So now let's go back to this concept. So we have, what does it mean that we have this concept of Av and Rayo? So he says, a little cute thing he says. Shehem Shlosha Pamim Av Od Av Dalet. So what is it, what did I actually say? He says, Rayo is 3 times Av. So he said, but I'm going to add another one on top of it, a 4th one. So then it becomes this word, Av and Rayo. Heim hanotrikon and gematria shall Vayaavor. So they actually come out to be, you put them together and they make the word Vayaavor. Is it V'ayim b'shefa gavanos? So look over the shefa gavanos, Sir hagavana, halacha l'maisa. So look at the shefa gavanos. So he actually brings it down, but on the other hand, we just looked at it in the Rashash. So here lamates. He's a benidfas etzleinu b'daf kuf lamed hey omid beis. So he says, this publication that we have, in other words, this up above is what we're seeing is the words of the Rav himself. He says that we have another place. V'ayim b'shefa gavanos. Let's see, Masha kasavda b'bir b'shem shar ma'amari Rashbi. So there's something else over there, and that's really the sikum, the end of that piece. How you doing?
I remember before, but it's just maybe I looked ahead. Okay.
Oh, you're ahead right now.
This is a good repetition for me to recap.
It's always good. Rabbi Mulgraby said that he at that time he had taught many people the Yotzrotz Chaim. But every time he said he went to do it, it was different. His interpretation was different. So I was thinking that maybe this idea that you would appreciate is that I think that what we're doing here is that we're entering into a stream, a hidden stream, like a river. And wherever you go, it's all water. You know, like you go to the Yotzrotz Chaim, it's the same thing. It's more detailed in its own way. And this is particular about Kavanos, you know, so he addresses it that way. But the stream, the water in the stream is the same. And personally, I think that describes me a little bit because it seems to me like I've been thirsty for the deeper water. Anyway, let's go to the next one. So, and if you be willing, I'd like to look at the Rashash Siddur again.
Okay.
Since I didn't record it, that's one thing, but it's not a bad idea just to get a little bit more. Okay, so he says, we're going to read across the top. He says, Yisbayer al yedei mashal. Then I read this yesterday. Hato ela sheyesh be'iku v'tipa l'mala. Okay. All right, so let's go over here and let's see this again. We're just going to read the Tiv now. That's what we're doing. Ke'es mevar harab b'mashal l'gashmi. So the Rav now is going to bring us this mashal. Mahatamba to Ellis, what's the purpose? Now, why are you trying to hold back this tipa? And we said before that the tipa is held back when you say the 13 mitos. Before it goes out of the Yesod of Ima, which is now located the Chazad Azah, Shalo Tarot's take it the mata, so shouldn't run quickly down below the Yesod Azah and get ready for the Yichud. So it's like a tube. So even though like it's a weak straw, that even so that is, and it has thin walls. But the mayim flows through it. Calls the man shelo nistam as piv lamata, as long as you don't cover up the mouth down below. Aval kasher nisgar as could say hatzinor, so you take and you close up the end of the tube, lamata, b'makom yitzias amayim, the place where the water came out. Oz, he says mekoach zarim amayim, because of the flow of the water she'eni yecholim l'tzeis, into the pressure that's on the water. Hamayim ayordim ya'al lamala, so the mayim will back up. It'll go down. That was going down. Ya'al lamala will start going backwards. Mekoach lachatz hamayim, because of the pressure of the water. Lo yuchlo mechitzas atzinor la'amod. So then this thin-walled tzinor can't handle it, and the water starts spilling out. And they would then start deteriorating the walls, and they would deteriorate the walls, and they would break the walls. And then the wall will come out, the water will come out and spill all over. So he says, how is this a mashal over to what we are? Where we are. Ke'ez mevar harav. As a nimshal, what is he trying to get at? The tzir a mashal shakas. So this story that he told, this metaphor, what's it going to? V'hu sha'or ha'elyon shal tipa. So let's go back to our tipa, that tremendous light. Shahana oskim bal ke'ez, we're dealing with it now, be'inyan Vayaavor. Should be arndach she'yoredis a tipa the mata, that we're saying like this, that the tipa is going downward, shehir ha'nimshal l'mayim, which is that part which is compared to water. And it's kind of b'mashal. V'hine calls the man she'yoredis hatipa ad l'nekeva. So as long as the tipa is heading towards malchus, towards the female element, lo hiskalkel mechitzos hatzinor shedarko overis hatipa. So there's no problem. There's no problem in corrupting the flow down there. It's not going to deteriorate in any way. Shedarko overis hatipa, because through this path is where the tipa is going to go. Shehem mechitzos yisod shel ima. We're not talking about a straw. We're talking about the mechitzos of the wall of ima, which he's saying are thin, which is probably true because I'm not sure why it would be true. But anyway, he says they're thin or they're breakable. At any rate, maybe the thin doesn't matter that much. But the point is that the water backs up, breaks through. But as it reaches, he says, Ha-tipa l'sofa yisod shel ima, when it reaches the bottom of the yisod of ima, now we're seeing this tipa is rumbling along. He says, Shesham ku ha-pet v'ketzecha yisod shel ima, which is where you have the mouth, the opening, and then the end of the yisod of ima, it's at the chazad azah. V'makam zecha nimsa b'chazad shel zer anpen, it's at the chazad zer anpen. V'gevin shesham, amora letzeis or ha-tipa zu. So he said, for this is the place that this is where it normally goes out. Sham ana ma'akvim es ha'or. So we hold back the light here, elyon shel tipa zu militzei. So we keep it so that it doesn't go out yet. Buying b'shefes, so the shefes got something on this. Going on, let's see, we're on the next column now. So the next column says, so because of the ability to be able to hold back, or this fact that it happens, the power that it generates, it says, and it stops the tipa from going down any further, and go outwards, which is like the water. So there's no power in the yisod of ima. Hachzik es or tipa, to be able to hold the light of the tipa, kevin sheor ze oro godol ma'od, because this light is a tremendously powerful light. V'atam, and so the reason kevin shuhu nimshak b'makom gavocha b'yoser, and we said previously, and he's repeating again, that he comes from such a tremendously high place. And he identifies that place, V'hu Ma'or HaMakif. It's coming from the Makif. So we understand the Makif is related all the way back. What the Makif is holding is the tremendous light of the Ein Sof, which is so pure, and he's still holding on to it, and there it is. Shehu Mechutz Moach HaChochma Shebechachma Shel Zah. So it's outside, right, of the Moach HaChochma, which would be the right brain of Zeir Anpin. So he's explaining it, he said it again. So it has such a tremendously high level that in its pure state, appearing as the Tselem, the Mem, maybe the Laman and the Mem of the Tselem, he hasn't distinguished which exactly it is. Let's see. Okay, just trying to think through it. So therefore, what happens is because of the stop-up, and where the stop-up is taking, I'm thinking that it's in the 13 meters of Rachamim, this is where the stop-up is taken up. He says it causes the mechitzas of the Yesod of Ima, miscalculating, they become deteriorated. He said the mistalkim legamre, and they completely and totally leave. They're gone. So now there are no wall, the nai is not there anymore. It's very interesting that the mochin remain naked. Let's say that maybe that's the right word. He said revealed, completely revealed, unclothed. Believe levush klal, with no clothing at all. Okay, now we're going to the next one. So this is a process that's taking place. That's what happens when you say the 13 meters, or believe it or not. So he said, so originally, let me read the top part again. I'm sorry. It says, so now we're going to explain how it is that Zah becomes completed. Matesha Tikuni Dikna, the Yud Gimel Tikuni Dikna, from the 9, which is always a 9, and to become 13. So he said, when originally, when these Mochin of Zah were inside of the Nai of Ima, there were only 3 Mochin, because if you remember, there were 4 Mochin, but they got squeezed into Chochmah, into the Nai. And as a result of that, there's only 3 of them. There's only 3 in the Nai. So he says, Shlosha Mochin Bilvad Shehem Chabad Kamavur Etzleinu, and we call that by the name of Chabad. So Chabad means the 4 Mochin in 3 containers. So therefore, along of this line, the beard of Zeir Anpin, Besod Teisha Tikuni Bilvad. It was only 9 Tikunim. So what do we have here? We have the Chabad of Zeir Anpin still in the Nai, it hasn't spread out. And as a result of that, the Teisha Tikunim of the Bikna of Zeir Anpin, that's all Zeir Anpin has. A Kaniskar Be'idris Niso. Now this is all in the Idra and could be seen over there. The Shahadikna Nimshachas Min HaMoach, because the Dikna comes from the Moach. What's the Moach? The Moach Stimor. The Dikna is originally developed out of there. V'hine Heim Shlosha Mochim. So here we have 3 Mochim. Kol Echad Kolo Mishloshtam. Now that's something you maybe didn't know. Maybe you didn't know that the Chochmah has a Chabad, and the Bina has a Chabad, and the Das has a Chabad. They're also all composed of 3s. So therefore, here you can see the number 9. Harehem Teisha Tikuni Bilvad. So therefore, there are 9 Tikunim. Aval Ata Shehem Bilti Lavush. But now, you don't have that situation anymore. He named him Nifradim Besod Arba Mochim. Now they split back into what they really are, which is 4 Mochim. Ki Hadas Nechlach L'Chasada Begavur, because Das, as we understand, was always 2 different pieces, Chasada and Gavuros. So now we say you multiply now, you have 4 Mochin times 3 different places, and you have, let me say, Shlosha Pamim Arba Mochim Hem Yod Beis. 3 times Arba Mochim. Now why did he take 3? Because basically they're Chabad, and then the Chabad is split into 4. Why didn't he say 4? What's my question? My question was, up above he says that, how'd you get to 9? He says, well, you have 3 Mochim Chabad. Each one of them is a Chabad. That's 3 times 3 is 9. So over here he said, but now, but now you're going to take the same 3, which is the Chabad, and you multiply it by 4 because now they're manifest as 4. 3 times 4 is 12. My question was, is that why don't you do 4 times 4? Why don't you say that each one of them has 4 mochin? Has 4 mochin inside of it. But he didn't say that. Vima kolel hem yud gimel. So add the kolel onto that. There yud gimel tikuni dikna the zer anpen. Okay, did I get you too mixed up over there? My mind is trying to look at it in with my questions. I have questions. Okay, let's look at the. We're moving along, and let's look at the number mem vav in the tiv. So he says ke'es now. Mivayr harav mahi matrasenu bahashras hamochin begulim. Yeah, that's right. Bahashaeris hamochin begulim. So what, in fact, is the goal? So in other words, we stopped up, by saying the 13 midos, we stopped up the yesod of Ima. And as a result of that, everything broke. That is, the nai of Ima disappeared. And there's different versions of where it disappears to, I think. And it disappears. At any rate, it leaves. It's gone. It deteriorates and leaves. And now...
Where do they go?
Well, it's possible that just to get absorbed into Zeranpin. But we're talking about a specific aspect because this is what it says. It's actually, there are 2 entrances of the Nai, not one. The first one is the one we're always talking about, which is bringing the Mochin, but the Nai there dissolves into Zeranpin, becomes a part of Zeranpin. It grows Zeranpin. But Zeranpin, the Nai, has within it the Chabad, but there's no Keser for Zeranpin. So where does the Keser come from? So he said, well, the first 3 are absorbed into the Guf of the Zah. They become a part of the 3 lines of Zeranpin. And Zeranpin doesn't have a crown, so therefore, all of these, everything that is Mayim Nukvin, it's a whole process going on here of everything rising up. And it causes Mayim Nukvin, I have an easier answer. The Nai of Ima, the real Nai of Ima, had to withdraw up into the, if you remember back this story, in order for the Mochin Zeranpin, his Chabad, the Mochin inside of the legs in the lower section of Ima had to evacuate themselves so that there would be room for the Mochin of Zeranpin to come into the Nai of Ima. Can you remember this? You want me to say it again? But I didn't say it well enough? Okay. So, therefore, the Nai was empty, and now come in the Mochin is their Anpin. So the question is, well, what happened to the Mochin, the original Mochin of Ima herself? They rose up, they evacuated. That evacuation is Mayim Nukvin. And what?
A vacated space in order for yeah.
That's right. That was the idea. The mother kills herself for the child. Something like some metaphor like that. Okay, that's that. Then the question is, what happened to the Mochin that were in the legs? And in the Nai of Ima, where'd they go? Well, they go up to the Tiferes. There's a whole thing in the Otzros Chaim about how it goes up, and so on and so forth, because that's the nature of Mayim Nukvin. Mayim Nukvin produces Mayim Duchrin. So therefore, now you have the absorption of the original Nai into the Gufa Zeranpin. It's disappeared. And there's no crown on the top of the head. There's no keser. So this Mayim Nukvin that took place as a result of the evacuation of the Mochin of the Nai of Ima causes a Mayim Duchrin to come down and create a new situation. And that new situation fills up, a new Nai is developed. But not just a new Nai, but there's we have different situations where we see that Tiferes is divided into 3 portions. So in this case, the bottom portion of Tiferes and the Nai of the new Nai, which is being developed now because there's no connection. In other words, you have to have the whole connection reestablished. Goes down into the head of Zeranpin, but that's the Nai goes into the places where it normally goes. That is the right line, left line, and middle line. But there's still the lower third of Tiferes, which comes and sits on top of the head of Zeranpin. And now as I'm telling you this, I realize I just said something wrong, so I have to say it again. then I think that it is that the nai of this new, it's called tani. So the tani, now the nai of that goes around the back of Zeir Anpin. Now I can't remember exactly what happens after that, but they create something over there, and the crown rests on top of the head. So it's very similar to the straps of the tefillin. So that's all I can say about that right now. I don't remember that part that well. But that's the part of the narrative that I remember. So anyway, I don't know where we started out. We got way over here. So I'm on the word ka'es in number mem vav. That's where my pencil is. So he says ka'es. Now we went through all of that. And that's what it is. You see that it's a narrative, and it's a narrative, I believe, like a stream, like a river. And the river is full of narratives, one after another, after another, after another. And they're all the same water. It's all the same taste. But they're different. So we need to know all the paths. That's what we're doing. I don't know, Rabbi Memran has this thing where he talks about mind. You know, it's, from a Breslov organization or orientation, I don't think about mind that much, because Rabbi Nachman talks about speaking, and his baitedus and talking out, and I can hear that. But there's also a concept of just pure mind. And that, obviously that's a higher level. It's not so physical. So it's thinking about connecting the pieces of the river, so that it can continue to flow because it's been corrupted. So that's a different issue. That's actually a different issue than one we're talking about here. Here we're talking about recognizing the stream, the different parts of the stream. That's what I think. Let's look at this ka'es mevoyer harav matrasenu. What are we trying to accomplish? B'hashe'eres hamochim magulim, by the fact that now we have broken down the walls of this of Ima, and as a result of that, the mochim are revealed. Bli levush klal, they have no clothing at all, and they're just shining like crazy. Our purpose here is to what? To make kosher, to prepare, and to add on to Zeir Anpin, dalet tikuni dikna, 4 more tikunim of his dikna. So look, this is all about bringing chesed into the world, right? Because the other 4, the whole 13 changes Zeir Anpin into very much like Eric Anpin. B'makom teisha shehoyabo adata, he only had 9 up to this point. V'techidach bevoyer Rav es a matzav v'chatam. So now the Rav wants to explain the position, the reason shekodim igu b'tipa, that before that you hold back the tipa ubabukiyas the yisod, and in other words, the process whereby you held it back, then you broke open the yisod shal ima hoyabo rak teisha tikunim bavad. He only had 9 tikunim. This whole time he only has 9 tikunim. So apparently, I'm thinking that what he means is that in order to bring the chef of the 13, you have to have a complete beard. Now, the ultimate chef has to have a complete beard in order to be able to deliver it down into Malchus. And in order to be able to make that happen, you say, I guess, hold back. He says, you say the 13 tikunim of Eric Anpin, of Shem, what do you call the 13? Tikunim of the beard of Eric Anpin. Kamavur be'idra rabba be'parshas Nesal. That's where the Idra Rabbah is located. Now, I think I went a little bit past. We're supposed to be here. How are you doing so far? And I lost track of the time because I screwed everything up. I could stop this and we go back and we'll pick up the next one. We'll go back and look at the Rashash again. How's that?
Want to do that now?
Yeah. Okay, I don't have to make a separate share. I like making a separate share, but let's just look at the. Let's see this. That's not it. Okay, here it is. Yeah, now let's look at it again. Now he's going to fill in lots more blanks, right? Okay, are you on page Tachnun?
Yes.
Okay, so we're just going to look over what we'd said before. So you say the word Vayaavor, and he says lahamshech, carrying along the line av chelik rishon, and he's going to show it to us down below. Tipa l'chesed izah. So from the tipa, we're going to bring this av, this one right here. La'akev or hatipa. And then we're going to try to hold that light of that tipa. We're going to hold it. So then he said something else, and maybe we saw this, maybe we didn't. L'kabetz gimel av dechagat legavura. So there are 3 different avs. And we're going to gather them together in the left arm. Below that, he shows us the 3 different avs. The first one is a straight 72, goes in the right arm. The next one is a sag. Sag is related with bina, which is the left line. So here we have, right line. Then the next one is going to be 63, which is the milui of Avaya with an aleph. And then we have the actual count of it, which makes the number 73, gematria 73. So that's the left line. Then we're going to bring in the one in the middle line. That looks like this. It's a Havaya by itself, which is Havaya is the name of the middle line, you could say in a certain way, just by like you see it like that. And then you have the Milui Alofim, which refers to Tiferes, or Zeranpin, which is a middle line. And that's what we brought down. Now we could do one more, is to produce a Yichud of Yisrael in Leah. And it looks like this. That is a Shilav, a combination of the name Elokim and the name Havaya, with Havaya on the outside. Because it could be the other way too, I think. I'm not sure with Elokim. So it's the Yud, skip every other letter, K, Vav, K. And then you take Elokim, skip every letter with the Aleph, Lamed. Then it has a K. And then it finishes out, because there's no matching, Yud Mem, like that. That's how the Shilav looks. And then he says, the Hamshich Av Mechesed Zah Leleah. That's what the Chesed Zah looks like. It's a Gematria, a Chesed is Gematria 72. And then he said, the Hamshich Tipa, Tipas Tipas, I guess a Tipas, what is this? A Chachma Midas Zah Leleah. Tipas Chesed. So I don't know. I don't know which one that one is. What you're sending over to Leah is the drop itself. That drop that you're working with, you're sending it to Leah. And this is what okay. I'll read it again because now I know what it is. It's time. Not such a good teacher. I'm sorry.
No,
yeah, we're chavrusas, man. We're working together. L'chamshek tipas heichosadim midas zer anpen leleah. So all of this, what's going on, and that's as far as I want to go. Let's try one more time on the top right. He says Vayaavor, then he says la'akev. That's where you're going to hold everything back. Lipkoa, then you break down the walls. We learned that today again. Legalos, what happens is now the mochin, which are called chub and chug, zer anpin, are now out on the open. The hashlim yud gimel tikunim, and that's what we learned today. As it comes along and it fills in the yud gimel tikunim. And then finally it reaches, after that, we hold back Hashem ke rachum v'chanim. So now the beard is filled out. So you go to Yisod, you're going to bring Mayim Nukvin De'ima Leleah. So this is the part I don't know yet. And then the Hey Gavuros, the Midas, is there Anpin Leleah, that's also going over there. Okay, all of that is taking place in the word Vayaavor. What the rest of it is, we keep working on it. And I want to thank you so much for learning with me today. It's really, really we're doing good. Bli Ein Hara, Hashem should help us. Amen. Blessing to the family.
You too.
Okay.